The house smelled like Mom's famous apple pie and Dad's weekend barbecue when I pulled into the driveway that Sunday. I could hear voices and laughter spilling out from the backyard before I even got out of the car. These family gatherings had become a monthly tradition since Mom turned 60 last year. She'd decided life was too short not to see her kids and grandkids more often. I grabbed the bottle of wine from my passenger seat and walked through the side gate. The whole clan was there already. My cousin Jake was chasing his twin boys around the pool, while his wife Sarah kept yelling at them to be careful. Aunt Linda was sitting in her usual spot under the big oak tree, complaining about her neighbor's loud music to anyone who'd listen. Uncle Mike had claimed his territory near the grill, giving Dad unsolicited advice about how to flip the burgers properly. "There she is," Mom called out when she spotted me. She was carrying a huge bowl of potato salad, wearing that apron I bought her for Mother's Day 3 years ago, the one with tiny sunflowers all over it. She still wore it to every gathering. I made my rounds, hugging everyone and catching up on the usual stuff. Jake's boys had started soccer season. Sarah was thinking about going back to school for her master's degree. Aunt Linda's arthritis was acting up again because of the weather. The same comfortable conversations we always had. The kind that made you feel like nothing ever really changed in the best possible way. When we all gathered around the long picnic table Dad had built in his garage last winter, I found myself sitting between Mom and my brother Tom. He looked good, relaxed in a way I hadn't seen in months. His wife Jennifer was glowing next to him, her cheeks pink from the afternoon sun and maybe a glass of wine. They'd been married for 3 years now, and they just seemed to fit together perfectly. The kind of couple that still held hands while walking and shared inside jokes across crowded rooms. The food was incredible, as always. Mom had outdone herself with the spread. There were Dad's famous barbecue ribs, her homemade coleslaw, corn on the cob dripping with butter, and fresh bread rolls that were still warm. Everyone was talking over each other, telling stories and passing dishes around the table. Jake's boys were making a mess with their corn, getting kernels everywhere, but nobody cared. That's when Tom stood up. He'd been fidgety all afternoon, I realize now, checking his watch and whispering something to Jennifer every few minutes. He picked up his beer bottle and tapped it with his fork, the metallic clink cutting through our chatter. The table gradually went quiet as everyone turned to look at him. "Hey everyone," he said, that big grin of his spreading across his face. "Jennifer and I have something we want to share with you all." My heart did a little skip. I knew that look. I'd seen it on other faces before, at other family gatherings, other announcements. But I pushed the thought away and smiled up at my brother, genuinely curious about what he was going to say. Jennifer reached over and took his hand, her eyes sparkling with excitement. She was practically bouncing in her chair. Tom looked down at her with so much love, it almost hurt to watch. Then he looked back at all of us. His family gathered around this table in our parents' backyard, and his smile got even bigger. "We're having a baby," he announced, his voice cracking slightly with emotion. The reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Mom started crying and laughing at the same time, jumping up to hug both of them. Dad was clapping and whooping like his team had just won the Super Bowl. Aunt Linda was already asking about due dates and baby names. Jake raised his beer in a toast, shouting congratulations over the chaos. I clapped along with everyone else, my hands moving automatically while my brain tried to catch up. I was happy for them. Genuinely happy. Tom was going to be an amazing father, and Jennifer would be the kind of mom who remembered every milestone and kept perfect baby books. They deserved this joy, this moment of pure celebration surrounded by people who loved them. But as I watched Mom fuss over Jennifer, asking if she was feeling okay and if she needed anything, I felt something cold settle in my chest. It was a familiar feeling, one I'd been pushing down for years now. The reminder of empty rooms in my own house, of baby clothes I'd bought hopefully and then donated quietly, of appointments and procedures and phone calls that always ended the same way. I kept smiling and clapping, even stood up to hug them both, but part of me was already pulling inward, retreating to that quiet place where I kept all the things I didn't want to feel. Not today, not during their moment. I could deal with my own stuff later, when I was alone in my car driving home, when I could let my face relax and stop pretending everything was fine. After dinner, we all moved inside for dessert and coffee. Mom had made her chocolate cake with the fudge frosting that took her half the day to perfect. Everyone was still buzzing about the baby news, making plans for baby showers and nursery themes. Dad was already talking about building a crib, sketching ideas on a napkin, while Tom laughed and told him to slow down. I settled onto the couch in the living room, balancing my plate of cake on my knee. The conversations had broken up into smaller groups now. Jake was showing Uncle Mike something on his phone, probably pictures from the boys' soccer game. Mom and Aunt Linda were deep in discussion about baby-proofing techniques, sharing war stories from when we were all little. Jennifer came over and sat down next to me, still practically glowing with happiness. She looked beautiful, though I don't think she was showing yet. Maybe it was just the excitement radiating from her, or the way she kept unconsciously touching her stomach like she was protecting something precious. "I can't believe it's finally happening," she said, taking a small bite of cake. "We've been trying for 8 months. I was starting to think something was wrong with us. 8 months. I almost laughed but caught myself. 8 months felt like nothing compared to the years I'd been hoping and trying and failing. But I wasn't going to rain on her parade with my own story. That wasn't fair to her, and it certainly wasn't fair to Tom. "You're going to be such a good mom," I told her, and I meant it. "Tom's lucky to have you." She beamed at the compliment, then glanced around the room at our family. Everyone was so happy, so excited about this new chapter. The house felt warm and full of possibility. "You know," she said, settling back into the couch cushions, "it's funny how life works out." I nodded, not sure where she was going with this. "Yeah, it really is." She took another bite of cake, chewing thoughtfully. Then she turned to look at me with this odd expression on her face. It wasn't mean, exactly, but there was something calculating in her eyes that I'd never noticed before, like she was measuring something. "I mean, some people just have it easy with this stuff," she continued, her voice getting a little louder, loud enough that Mom and Aunt Linda paused their conversation to listen. "And others don't. It's like we're all built differently, you know?" I felt my smile falter slightly, but I nodded anyway. "Sure, everyone's journey is different." "Exactly." She set her plate down on the coffee table and turned to face me more directly. "Like, some women are just naturally maternal. They're meant to be mothers. It's their calling, their purpose." The room had gotten quieter now. I could feel people starting to pay attention to our conversation, though they were trying to be subtle about it. Jake had stopped showing Uncle Mike his phone. Tom was looking over from where he'd been talking to Dad. "And then there are other women," Jennifer continued, her voice carrying easily across the room now. She had this little smirk on her face, like she was about to deliver the punchline to a joke. "Well, not everyone is meant to be a mother, right?" The words hit me like a physical blow. I felt my chest tighten and my face burn hot with embarrassment. She knew. She'd known about my struggles for years. Tom had told her about the doctor appointments, the treatments that didn't work, the conversations I'd had with Mom late at night when I thought no one else was listening. The room went completely silent. Even Jake's boys, who had been playing with their toy cars in the corner, seemed to sense the shift in atmosphere. Everyone was looking at us now, some confused, others starting to understand what had just happened. I tried to keep my expression neutral, but my hands were trembling. I could feel tears threatening to spill over, and I knew if I opened my mouth to respond, my voice would crack and give me away completely. She'd done this on purpose, in front of everyone, right after announcing her own pregnancy. The timing wasn't accidental. "I should help Mom with the dishes," I managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. I stood up quickly, my plate of half-eaten cake sliding off my lap onto the floor. The sound of the ceramic hitting the hardwood seemed incredibly loud in the silence. "Oh, honey, don't worry about that," Mom started to say, but I was already moving toward the hallway. "I'll be right back," I called over my shoulder, not trusting myself to look at anyone. I could hear the confused murmurs starting up behind me as I walked quickly down the hall toward the bathroom. My face was burning with shame, and I could feel everyone's eyes following me. I heard Tom's voice, sharp with confusion. "Jen, what was that about?" But I didn't stick around to hear her response. I just needed to get somewhere private before I completely fell apart in front of my entire family. I barely made it to the bathroom before the tears started. My hands were shaking so badly I could hardly turn the lock on the door. The moment I heard that little click, I collapsed onto the cold tile floor, my back against the bathtub, and let everything I'd been holding in come pouring out. The sobs came from somewhere deep inside me, the kind of crying that leaves you breathless and raw. I pressed my hands over my mouth, trying to muffle the sounds, but it was no use. Years of disappointment and heartbreak were finally finding their way out. Every negative pregnancy test, every failed procedure, every well-meaning friend who told me to just relax and it'll happen. It all came rushing back at once. I could hear muffled voices from the living room. Someone was talking in sharp, hushed tones, probably Tom confronting Jennifer about what she'd said. But their conversation felt far away, like it was happening in another world. All I could focus on was the pain in my chest and the way my whole body was shaking. This wasn't supposed to be how I felt about my brother having a baby. I was supposed to be the supportive sister, the aunt who would spoil the kid rotten and babysit on weekends. Instead, I was falling apart on my parents' bathroom floor because his wife had decided to use my infertility as some kind of weapon. The worst part was that she wasn't wrong. Maybe I wasn't meant to be a mother. Maybe there was something fundamentally broken about me that everyone could see except me. Maybe I'd been kidding myself all these years, going through treatments and holding on to hope when I should have just accepted reality and moved on. I thought about all the baby showers I'd attended with a smile on my face, buying cute little outfits, and pretending I was just as excited as everyone else. All the pregnancy announcements I'd celebrated while dying a little inside. All the times I'd held other people's babies and wondered if I'd ever have my own moment like that. The tile floor was freezing against my legs, but I couldn't bring myself to get up. I just sat there, letting the tears fall, finally letting myself feel everything I'd been pushing down for so long. I felt like a failure as a woman, like I was missing some essential piece that made other people whole. A soft knock on the door made me freeze. "Honey?" It was Mom's voice, gentle and concerned. "Are you okay in there?" I wiped my face with the back of my hand, trying to pull myself together. "I'm fine, Mom. Just give me a minute. Take all the time you need," she said. I could hear the worry in her voice, and I knew she was probably standing right outside the door, wanting to help, but not knowing how. I looked at myself in the mirror across from where I was sitting. My eyes were red and swollen. My mascara smeared down my cheeks. I looked exactly like what I was. A broken woman having a breakdown at a family gathering. The sight of myself made me cry even harder. But somewhere in the middle of all that pain, something else started to bubble up. Anger. Not just at Jennifer for her cruel comment, but at myself for letting her words have so much power over me. For sitting on this bathroom floor feeling sorry for myself instead of fighting back. For letting other people's opinions define what my life should look like. I'd been living in this weird limbo for years, putting my life on hold while I waited for something that might never happen. Turning down opportunities and adventures, because I was always thinking about the next treatment, the next possibility. When was the last time I'd made a decision based on what I actually wanted, instead of what might help me get pregnant? The anger felt better than the sadness. It felt like energy, like something I could actually use. I pushed myself up off the floor, my legs stiff from sitting on the cold tile. My reflection looked terrible, but there was something different in my eyes now. Something determined. I turned on the faucet and splashed cold water on my face, trying to wash away the mascara streaks. The water was shockingly cold against my hot, swollen skin, but it helped clear my head. I looked at myself again, really looked, and for the first time in months, I saw something other than disappointment staring back at me. I saw a woman who deserved to be happy, who deserved to have the family she'd always dreamed of, even if it didn't look the way she'd originally imagined. I saw someone who was stronger than she'd been giving herself credit for, someone who'd survived years of heartbreak and was still standing. Jennifer's words echoed in my head again, but this time they didn't feel like a judgment. They felt like a challenge. Maybe she was right that not everyone was meant to be a mother in the traditional sense, but that didn't mean I couldn't be a mother at all. There were other ways, other paths I'd been too scared or too stubborn to seriously consider. I dried my face with one of Mom's soft hand towels and took a long, deep breath. I could hear the family gathering continuing in the living room, the conversations picking back up after whatever confrontation had happened while I was in here. Soon I'd have to go back out there and face everyone, pretend like nothing had happened, smile and congratulate Tom and Jennifer again. But something had shifted inside me during those minutes on the bathroom floor. I was tired of being the victim in my own story, tired of letting other people's milestones highlight everything that was missing from my life. If I wanted to be a mother, really wanted it, then I needed to stop waiting for it to happen to me and start making it happen for me. I spent another few minutes in that bathroom, fixing my makeup as best I could and practicing normal expressions in the mirror. When I finally unlocked the door and stepped back into the hallway, I could hear that the gathering had settled back into its usual rhythm. Someone had turned on music, and I could smell fresh coffee brewing in the kitchen. Mom was waiting for me in the hallway, leaning against the wall with her arms crossed. She had that concerned mother look on her face, the one that meant she was ready to fight dragons for me if necessary. "You want to talk about what happened in there?" she asked quietly. "Not really," I said. And surprisingly, I meant it. For the first time in years, I didn't want to rehash my problems or analyze what someone else had said to hurt me. "I'm okay, Mom." "Really?" She studied my face for a moment, probably looking for signs that I was lying, but whatever she saw there seemed to satisfy her. "All right, but if you change your mind, you know where to find me." I nodded and gave her a quick hug before heading back toward the living room. The conversation had moved on to other topics now. Jake was telling everyone about his promotion at work, and Aunt Linda was showing off pictures of her new garden. Jennifer was sitting in Tom's lap, his arm wrapped protectively around her waist. She glanced up when I walked in, her expression uncertain, maybe even a little guilty. I didn't avoid her gaze, but I didn't seek it out either. I simply found an empty chair and rejoined the conversation like nothing had happened. When Jake asked me about my own work, I answered normally. When Dad wanted to know if I'd seen the game last weekend, I chatted with him about the highlights. I was present and engaged, but something fundamental had shifted inside me. The old me would have spent the rest of the gathering analyzing Jennifer's comment, replaying it over and over, letting it poison the entire day. The old me would have gone home and cried some more, then called in sick to work the next day because I couldn't face the world. But sitting there in my parents' living room, surrounded by the familiar chaos of family, I felt something I hadn't experienced in a long time. Clarity. I knew what I wanted. I'd always known, actually. I wanted to be a mother. Not because society expected it of me, not because it would validate my worth as a woman, but because I genuinely believed I had love to give and a home to share. I wanted bedtime stories and scraped knees and piano recitals. I wanted to teach someone how to ride a bike and help with homework and worry about teenage heartbreak. The biological path hadn't worked for me. After 3 years of trying naturally, then 2 years of fertility treatments, my doctor had finally sat me down 6 months ago and gently suggested that we'd exhausted our options. The words "unexplained infertility" had felt like a cruel joke. How could something be unexplained when it was ruining my life? But sitting there watching my family, seeing how love moved between people regardless of genetics or biology, I realized I'd been thinking about motherhood all wrong. Tom wasn't going to love his baby because they shared DNA. He was going to love that child because it was his to love, his to protect, his to raise. The connection would come from the daily acts of caring, not from some mystical blood tie. When the gathering finally started winding down around 8 o'clock, I helped Mom clean up the kitchen while everyone else said their goodbyes. She kept glancing at me like she was waiting for me to break down again, but I felt strangely calm, more centered than I'd been in months. "You sure you're all right, sweetheart?" she asked as we loaded the dishwasher together. "Yeah, I am." I dried my hands on the dish towel and turned to face her. "Actually, I think I might be better than all right. I think I might finally know what I need to do." She raised an eyebrow, curious. "Oh?" I hesitated for a moment, not sure if I was ready to say the words out loud yet. But keeping everything to myself hadn't been working out so well. "I'm thinking about adoption, Mom. Seriously thinking about it." Her face lit up with surprise and something that looked like relief. "Really? Oh, honey, that's wonderful. Have you looked into it at all?" "Not yet, but I'm going to start tomorrow. I'm tired of waiting for my life to begin. If I want to be a mother, then I need to make it happen instead of hoping it'll happen to me." She pulled me into one of her fierce mother hugs, the kind that made me feel like I was 10 years old again. "You're going to be an amazing mom," she whispered into my hair. "Any child would be lucky to have you." For the first time all day, I felt tears prick at my eyes. but they were different tears. These felt like hope instead of grief. Thanks, Mom. I needed to hear that. Driving home that night, I felt like I was seeing everything with new eyes. The familiar streets of my neighborhood looked different somehow, full of possibility instead of emptiness. When I pulled into my driveway and saw my little house with its extra bedroom that I'd been avoiding for months, I didn't feel the usual pang of sadness. Instead, I started imagining how I might turn it into a nursery, what color I'd paint the walls, where I'd put the crib, how the morning light would look filtering through new curtains. That night, instead of going to bed early and pulling the covers over my head like I usually did after difficult family gatherings, I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop and started researching. I read about different types of adoption, about home studies and waiting periods and support groups. I bookmarked agency websites and read testimonials from other families who'd been built through adoption. It was after midnight when I finally closed the laptop, but I wasn't tired. I was energized in a way I hadn't been in years. Jennifer's cruel comment had been meant to diminish me, to put me in my place and highlight everything I lacked. Instead, it had become the catalyst for me to finally stop dwelling on what I couldn't control and start focusing on what I could. The next morning, I woke up before my alarm, which never happened. Usually I had to drag myself out of bed and rely on 3 cups of coffee to feel human. But that Monday, I was wide awake at 6:30, my mind already racing with everything I needed to do. I'd made a list the night before, sitting at my kitchen table with all those adoption websites still open on my laptop. Call agencies, schedule appointments, start gathering documents. The list was long and a little overwhelming, but for the first time in years, overwhelming felt like progress instead of paralysis. I called in sick to work. It wasn't entirely a lie. I was sick of putting my life on hold, sick of letting other people's milestones highlight my own disappointments. My boss, Sarah, was understanding when I said I needed a personal day to handle some important family planning matters. She'd been through her own fertility struggles a few years back, and I think she suspected what I was dealing with. The first agency I called was one I'd bookmarked the night before, a local organization that specialized in domestic infant adoption. The woman who answered the phone, Linda, had the warmest voice I'd ever heard. When I told her I was interested in learning more about their program, she didn't launch into a sales pitch or overwhelm me with statistics. She just asked how I was feeling about everything. Nervous, I admitted, pacing around my living room with the phone pressed to my ear. But also excited. Does that make sense? Perfect sense, she said with a laugh. Those are exactly the right feelings to have. Would you like to come in this week for an information session? No pressure, just a chance to ask questions and see if we might be a good fit for each other. I scheduled an appointment for Thursday afternoon. Then I called 2 more agencies, just to get a sense of my options. Each conversation felt like opening a door I'd been afraid to walk through. The social workers I spoke with were kind and knowledgeable, and none of them made me feel like damaged goods or a last resort. They talked about adoption as a positive choice, a way to build families that was just as valid and meaningful as any other. The paperwork was intense. I spent the next few days gathering documents I hadn't thought about in years. My birth certificate, tax returns, medical records, employment verification. Each form felt like proof that I was serious about this, that I wasn't just dreaming anymore, but actually taking concrete steps toward becoming a mother. The hardest part was the personal essay. Every agency wanted a detailed letter about why I wanted to adopt, what kind of parent I hoped to be, what I could offer a child. I sat at my kitchen table for hours, trying to put into words feelings I'd been carrying around for years. How do you explain that ache for someone who doesn't exist yet? How do you describe the love you already feel for a child you've never met? I've always known I wanted to be a mother, I wrote. Not because I need a child to complete me, but because I have so much love to give. I want to be someone's safe place, someone's biggest cheerleader, someone's home. I want to teach a child that they are wanted, that they are precious, that they belong exactly where they are. I didn't mention the fertility struggles or Jennifer's cruel comment. This wasn't about what I couldn't do. It was about what I could do, what I was choosing to do. I wrote about my job as a kindergarten teacher, about how much I loved watching children discover new things about the world. I wrote about my family, about the values my parents had instilled in me, about the kind of traditions I wanted to pass on. The home study process was more invasive than I'd expected. A social worker named Patricia came to my house twice, walking through every room, asking about my childhood, my relationships, my finances, my support system. She wanted to know about my mental health history, my plans for childcare, how I would handle the challenges of raising an adopted child. At first, all the questions felt overwhelming and a little insulting. Did they really need to know about every relationship I'd ever had? Did they need to inspect my medicine cabinet and check my smoke detector batteries? But Patricia explained that they weren't trying to find reasons to reject me. They were trying to prepare me for the realities of parenthood and make sure I had the resources and support I'd need. Adoption isn't about finding perfect families, she told me during our second meeting. It's about finding prepared families. Families who understand that every child comes with their own story, their own needs, their own journey. I started attending a support group for prospective adoptive parents. Meeting other people who were on the same path was incredibly helpful. There was David, a single dad who'd been waiting for 2 years. There was Maria and Steve, who'd tried IVF 5 times before deciding to pursue adoption. There was Janet, who'd always planned to adopt, even though she could have biological children. Everyone had different reasons for being there, but we all shared the same hope, the same nervous excitement about the future. We talked about our fears. What if a birth mother changed her mind? What if we weren't chosen? What if we weren't good enough parents? We also talked about our dreams, about the children we were hoping to welcome into our lives. I didn't tell my family about any of this right away. I wanted to get through the initial steps, to feel more confident about the process, before I opened myself up to their questions and opinions. Mom kept calling to check on me, and I could tell she was curious about how my thinking about adoption was going, but I wasn't ready to share details yet. It felt good to have something that was just mine, a project I was working on that had nothing to do with anyone else's expectations or timeline. For the first time in years, I was making decisions based entirely on what I wanted, not on what other people thought I should want, or what society told me my life should look like. 3 months after that awful Sunday at my parents' house, I was officially approved and waiting. My profile book was complete. Photos of me and my house and my family, letters from friends and colleagues, the essay I'd agonized over for weeks. Patricia assured me that my profile was strong and that she expected I wouldn't wait long. Now came the hardest part, the waiting. But this waiting felt different from the years I'd spent hoping to get pregnant. This wasn't passive hoping. This was active preparation. I was on a list, in the system, moving toward something concrete. Somewhere out there, a woman was making one of the most difficult decisions of her life, and she might choose me to raise her child. The thought was both terrifying and thrilling. The call came on a Tuesday morning in April, 6 months after I'd been approved. I was in the middle of a parent-teacher conference at school, discussing reading levels with Mrs. Henderson about her son Marcus, when my phone buzzed with a call from Linda at the agency. I'd programmed her number into my phone so I'd recognize it immediately, if it ever came. "I'm so sorry," I told Mrs. Henderson, my hands shaking as I picked up the phone. "I have to take this. We have a situation," Linda said without preamble, her warm voice carrying an undercurrent of excitement. "A birth mother named Ashley went into labor early this morning. She's been looking at profiles for the past few hours, and she's chosen you. She wants to meet with you today if possible." My heart stopped. After months of waiting, of wondering if this day would ever come, it was actually happening. Today? She wants to meet today? The baby hasn't been born yet, but Ashley wants to make sure you're both comfortable with the match before she delivers. She's at Regional Medical Center downtown. Can you be there by 2 o'clock? I looked at the clock on my classroom wall. It was 11:30. I had 2.5 hours to prepare for the most important meeting of my life. "Yes," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Yes, I can be there." Mrs. Henderson must have seen something in my face because she immediately started gathering her papers. "Is everything all right, dear?" "Everything's perfect," I said, tears already starting to form in my eyes. "Everything's absolutely perfect." I called my principal and explained that I had a family emergency, which was true in a way. Then I raced home to change clothes and grab the folder of documents Linda had told me to keep ready. I called Mom from my car, my hands shaking so badly I could barely dial. "Mom, "It's happening," I said when she answered. "The adoption. A baby's being born today, and the mother wants to meet me." I could hear her sharp intake of breath. "Oh, sweetheart. Are you ready? How are you feeling?" "Terrified," I admitted, sitting in my driveway trying to calm down enough to drive safely. What if she doesn't like me? What if I say the wrong thing? What if she changes her mind? "She's not going to change her mind," Mom said firmly. "She chose you for a reason. Just be yourself, honey. You're going to be wonderful." The drive to the hospital felt like it took forever, and no time at all. I kept checking my reflection in the rearview mirror at stoplights, trying to decide if I looked like someone who should be trusted with a newborn. I'd chosen a simple blue dress. Nothing too fancy, but still nice enough to show I'd made an effort. I wanted to look like a mother, but I wasn't sure what that meant anymore. Linda met me in the hospital lobby. She was exactly what I'd expected from her voice. A woman in her 50s with kind eyes and graying hair, wearing a comfortable cardigan that looked like it had seen 1,000 similar meetings. "How are you holding up?" she asked, giving me a quick hug. "I think I might throw up," I said honestly. She laughed. "That's normal. Ashley's feeling the same way. She's 17, and this is one of the hardest decisions she's ever had to make. She wants what's best for her baby, and she thinks that might be you. But she needs to feel confident about that choice." We took the elevator to the maternity ward, and Linda filled me in on the details as we walked down the hall. Ashley was from a small town about an hour outside the city. She was a senior in high school, planning to go to college in the fall. The baby's father wasn't in the picture. She'd been working with the agency for 2 months, looking at profiles and trying to make this decision. "She's been in labor for about 6 hours," Linda explained as we stopped outside room 314. "She's nervous about meeting you, but she's also excited. She said something about your essay that really resonated with her, about wanting to be someone's safe place. Those had been some of the hardest words I'd ever written, and now they were about to change my life." Ashley was smaller than I'd expected, curled up in the hospital bed wearing a faded t-shirt from her high school. She had long brown hair pulled back in a messy bun and dark circles under her eyes. But when she smiled at me, her whole face lit up. She looked so young, younger than some of my students' older siblings. "You're Sarah," she said. And I nodded, suddenly unable to speak. "I read your letter like 50 times. "You teach kindergarten?" "I do," I managed to say, pulling a chair up next to her bed. "For 8 years now. I love it." We talked for almost an hour. She asked me about my family, my house, my plans for the baby. I asked her about school, her dreams for college, how she was feeling. It was surreal, sitting in that hospital room getting to know this brave young woman who was about to make me a mother. "I want her to know she was wanted," Ashley said at one point, her hand resting on her belly. "Not by me. I mean, I do love her, but I can't give her what she needs. I want her to know that you wanted her, that you chose her, just as much as I'm choosing you. Her. The baby was a girl. I was going to have a daughter. She'll know, I promised, and I meant it with every fiber of my being. She'll always know how wanted she is." Ashley went into active labor around 6 o'clock that evening. I waited in the hallway with Linda, pacing and praying, and trying not to think about all the things that could still go wrong. What if Ashley changed her mind when she saw the baby? What if there were complications? What if this was all just a dream I was about to wake up from? At 8:47 p.m., a nurse came out to tell us the baby had been born. 6 pounds, 3 ounces, perfectly healthy. Ashley wanted to see me. I walked into that room on shaking legs and saw her, my daughter, for the first time. She was wrapped in a pink blanket, her tiny face peaceful and perfect. Ashley was holding her, tears streaming down her cheeks, but she was smiling. "She's beautiful," I whispered, and Ashley nodded. "Do you want to hold her?" Ashley asked, and I could tell it took everything she had to say those words. I held my daughter for the first time sitting in a hospital chair at 9 o'clock on a Tuesday night in April. She was so small, so warm, so completely perfect. When she opened her eyes and looked at me, I felt something shift inside my chest, something click into place that I'd been missing my whole life. "Hi, sweet girl," I whispered to her. "I'm your mama. I've been waiting for you for so long." I named her Emma, which means whole, or complete, because that's exactly what she made me. Whole in a way I'd never been before. Complete in a way I'd stopped believing was possible. 2 days later, I carried Emma out of that hospital and brought her home to the nursery I'd spent months preparing. The room I'd painted soft yellow, because I hadn't known if she'd be a he or a she. The crib my dad had insisted on building himself. The mobile Mom had bought, with little lambs and clouds that played a gentle lullaby. The next family gathering was different. I walked into my parents' house carrying Emma in her car seat, and the room went silent. Then everyone was talking at once, crowding around to see her, to meet the newest member of our family. Mom cried. Dad took about 100 pictures. Even Jennifer seemed genuinely happy, though she was quieter than usual. "She's perfect," Tom said, holding Emma like she was made of spun glass. "She looks just like you did when you were a baby." People said that a lot, that Emma looked like me. And maybe she did in some ways. But it didn't matter. She was mine not because of genetics or blood, but because of choice. Because Ashley had chosen me to be her mother, and I had chosen to love her with everything I had. Being a mother was everything I dreamed it would be, and completely different from what I'd expected. It was harder, and more exhausting, and more wonderful than I'd ever imagined. But every sleepless night, every diaper change, every milestone felt like a gift I'd never thought I'd receive. Emma is 2 now, and she calls me Mama in a voice that still makes my heart skip a beat every time I hear it. She's curious, and funny, and stubborn, and perfect. She loves books and blocks and playing peekaboo. She has Ashley's dark hair and my laugh, or maybe I have hers. I think about Jennifer's words sometimes, about how not everyone is meant to be a mother. She was right, in a way. Not everyone is meant to be a mother the way she became one. But there are so many ways to build a family, so many paths to the same destination. Emma made me a mother not through biology, but through love, through choice, through the kind of miracle that happens when the right people find each other at exactly the right time.